So I was listening to this podcast the other day about how school systems aren't working in the traditional way anymore. The traditional way is you've got one teacher and 25 to 35 students in there. And statistics show that it's just not working. We're not graduating students. They're not competing with other students from other countries worldwide, all that kind of stuff. And so there are some companies and organizations and schools that are trying to innovate and trying to think a little bit differently about how to teach in the classroom and how to make this whole thing work. And it made me stop and think about whether we have the courage and the ability to do this as churches, as pastors, as leaders, to stop and think, is what we're doing working? Because I really don't think that if it is, if one teacher can't teach 25 students effectively and they're failing, how can one pastor or one pastoral staff teach thousands of people? It doesn't work. Even a small church, how does one pastor, if a small church is a really pastor-centric church and there's one pastor teaching even 100 people, we know that doesn't work. It doesn't produce what we're trying to produce. All right, so what are we trying to produce? Well, I think we're trying to produce full circle followers of Jesus. And you can take our foundation series to learn about what that is. But that just simply means this. We're producing disciples who, number one, trust Jesus. People who trust Jesus for their salvation. Some churches call that evangelism. It's a little bit more than evangelism. But number one, we're trusting Jesus. We're seeing it his way. We're giving our hearts to Christ. People are coming to faith. Number one. A lot of churches fail at that. Number two, we're producing disciples who are honoring God, people who are out there who are trying to live to honor God in this world, in this increasingly complex world, I might add. People, Christians, men, women, young people who understand God's word. They can articulate it for themselves, they understand it, and they're living according to a biblical worldview. They're living out their biblical values. Are we doing this as a church? No, I don't think we are. I think that so many Christians, so many churches are failing to do this. So many families are failing to do this. And then number three, the third thing in a full circle pursuer of God, and this is what I think we're really getting wrong, is we're producing disciples who are helping make other disciples. So in other words, we're getting people in the game. We're making Christians who are actually out there making Christians, engaging their kids, engaging their friends, mentoring, what we like to call mentoring other people. They're getting in the game, but our churches aren't set up to do that at all. Our churches are typically set up to go to church, listen to a professional pastor. The more entertaining, the better. And there's nothing wrong with entertaining teachers. I hope we have a lot of entertaining teachers. But the point is, that can't be the point. That can't be the goal. The goal certainly can't be to have more people come and sit there in the seat and listen to a preacher and then go home. I don't care how big of a church we're growing by doing this, we're not winning. Because if we're not creating full circle followers of Jesus, full circle disciples, then we're not doing the job, and we need to start doing it differently. And a full circle disciple is someone who trusts Jesus, who honors God with his life, and then who helps other people trust Jesus and honor God. In other words, they're disciple makers. So bottom line is this. If we're not creating churches that have discipleship cultures, mentoring cultures is another way to say it. If our churches aren't churches with mentoring cultures, rather than just preacher cultures, then we're not winning. We're not doing what the church was intended to do. We're not producing what this church is supposed to be producing. We're failing our families. We're failing the people who walk into our churches. We're failing God. So guys, pastors, leaders, I hope you'll hear this. Let's learn from some of these innovators in the school system. Let's think about new ways to create mentoring cultures in our churches as well. Now, use those resources below to talk about this with your elders, with your small group leaders, or with just people that want to start doing church differently.